there'll definitely be some tension. I don't think there's any getting around that. What's unfortunate is that, when you sort of look forward, and it's just really interesting going back to the commodity question. If you look at the energy production that's coming out of the U.S., the plan that's coming out of increased oil from the tar sands, from shale and natural gas, you're talking about a country here that's been very dependent on foreign imports for most of my adult life, certainly the last 30, 40 years. But this is going to change dramatically. There was the report from the International Energy Agency that came out in November that actually called for the U.S. being maybe a net exporter by the middle of the next decade. And that has could have a dramatic impact on geopolitical power and issues that are going on in the world. I see this as a sort of an interesting crossroads for Russia, because it's profited so much for the last decade or so from relatively high energy prices. I don't know whether they're going to stay so high and for how long, because if countries around the world begin to try to grow their economies, that it's less fossil fuel dependent, more efficient, if the U.S. begins to import less from overseas, you could see less stress on prices, and that'll give Russia a lot less financial leeway to kind of make the reforms that it needs to. And I think that that's really what Russia should focus on, is this new world, as opposed to worrying about a missile defense system. It's that the world of the 20th century should be less driven by defense and military issues and much more by economic and human capital issues. And if you see the global economy changing over the next decade or so, and I think this energy renaissance in the U.S. is a game changer, it's a geo-economic game changer, then a lot of the U.S.'s foreign policies might begin to reshape a little bit, particularly in a place, let's say, like the Middle East, as that becomes less dependent. And I just think that if energy prices flatten, if the dollar stays strong because U.S. imports become less and maybe even exports begin to increase, because with the U.S. electricity now is some of the lowest in the world. In fact, it's much less than even Russian electricity. And what's going to be interesting is that if we can get manufacturing and reshore certain types of industries here in the States again, the world is just going to look very, very different in 10 or 15 years. And as I said, I don't think that we should be fixating or obsessing about a missile system in Central Europe. Russia really needs to think more about, how am I going to shape the human capital in the country to be able to compete globally in the next generation. And that to me is really what the priority should be.